Everybody, welcome to Hit Rewind, the final entry in the films of 1995. I got Andrew here, and we're going to be discussing the animated, Disney stuff of 1995. Of course, can't do all of them, so we just selected 5. That's it. I don't know why I awkwardly just sat here silently.
Hey. Hi, sorry. Hi. How you guys doing?
I should have said something.
I was getting familiar with all the intros and everything. And listening to your voice again, it's always good to hear from you.
Well, it's so funny is on the show you go by Andrew, but in real life I've only ever called you Drew, and we've never actually cemented down what do we go by. What do you prefer?
Whatever you're comfortable with.
Right.
I mean, honestly, I was called Drew in the store because there were like a million Andrews.
That's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was just like, okay, well, I'll be Drew. So a lot of, I mean, everybody that worked with still calls me Drew. I mean, everybody. So it's just something, my friends call me a lot. So I mean, hey, you're my friend.
Yay.
You're my friend. So whatever you call me, it's all good.
And of course, I have a really common name, Michael. So we have lots of people where I work named Michael. So everybody has different variations. Now I go by Cookie.
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 How did you go by? How did you come?
That's my
Cookie?
last name. You didn't know that? You didn't know my last name is Cook.
Oh, Cook. Okay. Well, yeah, I knew that.
Okay.
Get Cookie out of it.
I know. All right, so let's get the awkwardness out of the way. Act like professionals.
I didn't know if you brought cookies to work or you just always eat cookies for lunch. I don't know.
No. So let's start off. What's the first selection you want to go with?
I mean, we can do Tall Tale. That's
okay.
Always a good one.
I went to the theaters and saw a double feature of this and the Goofy movie, and I had a hell of a fun time. Someone told me that it was. I'm wrong though. That it was. Tall Tale and Quick and the Dead, and I'm having a hard time thinking that Disney would allow a very, very violent movie called Quick and the Dead to be with a Tall Tale.
Especially because Tall Tale is that family, feel-good type movie.
Yeah, I mean, I can see maybe there's a screw-up because they're both Westerns, but, I mean, I'm just going to pretend that it was Goofy movie and Tall Tale. I think that Patrick Swayze is absolutely tailor-made for a Western. I wish he had made more.
Yeah, he had a really good showing for Tall Tale. I really enjoyed seeing him with the big old thick mustache. It was a little different, but he did it well, and had some pretty good company too. And it was Oliver Platt, is it?
Yep.
Yeah, which is he's almost unrecognizable in all the costume and stuff, but it was a really, really great thing to see them and have his little kind of American old Western accent going.
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer this tanked. And after Dance with Wolves and Unforgiven made a crap ton of money, all the studios were starting to make Westerns again, but most of them tanked, so it died just as fast as it rose. But you see all the money on the screen. This is back when Disney didn't have $150-250 million to spend on every single movie. $32 million was a lot for them.
Yeah, and I feel like one of the reasons why this didn't do as well is because this is a movie a little more tailor-made for kids. Your main heroic person is a young boy, so it's going to be one of those movies that kind of tailors more to kids. And obviously at the time, the kids weren't paying for these types of movies.
Right.
It was the parents. So
So it's if you haven't seen it, it's a collection of some of the Tall Tales that you read as a kid. I was really big into the Tall Tales. Did you get these books when you were a kid?
I remember one of my favorites was John Henry, and kind of the whole Tall Tale of him taking on the locomotive, and that always interested me. I did hear, obviously of Paul Bunyan and things like that, but John Henry definitely interested me a little bit more, just thinking man, strictly manpower, kind of overrode, at the time, steam engines and things like that. But yeah, I was a little more interested in that story than a Paul Bunyan or a Buffalo or Wild Bill.
Pecos Bill, yeah.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, well, I mean, I'm back in Indiana now, but when I was a kid, the big thing around here was Johnny Appleseed. That was one of those tall-tailed legendary things because we had like Johnny Appleseed Park and all this stuff because I guess he had come through Fort Wayne, Indiana, whatever, and that was a big place where he started planting the trees. And I remember asking my mom, like, who is this person? So she got me a book, and then she realized how much I loved it. So she got me these series of books. Some were tall tales, like these, and like Paul Bunyan and stuff like that, John Henry. And then some were like about like what's the guy who came up Louis Pasteur, you know, like and some of them were presidents, and so is for a while I had trouble telling the difference between reality and tall tales. I actually thought Paul Bunyan was real.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I remember, learning some of these tall tales in school too. So obviously, as young impressionable kids, you get kind of exposed to a lot of these different things, and whether it's a teaching goal or not, but when you're generally interested in things, or you hear some of these kind of unbelievable feats, you tend to pay attention to them. I mean, I do remember, like I said with the whole John Henry thing, I remember that more than the dates of the Proclamation, Declaration, and stuff like that.
Right. Well, what's funny is John Henry's the one that isn't just like. A lot of them feel like ego feeding tall tales, like, well, you believe this outrageous stuff or whatever. But the parable of John Henry is no matter the odds, you give it everything you got, and that's a really strong story. I think that's why it connects so much more than a lot of these.
Yeah, and the great thing about it is, I mean, obviously, like, things like to be able to have the quickest draw in the West, that's obviously a really specialized skill, or to be able to do some of these things in these tall tales requires things that are so much skill ridden or physical gifts. And with John Henry, it's just effort, I think, more than anything, like effort and perseverance and not believing and quit, which I think everybody can kind of relate to, and everybody has a power of doing that.
Right. This basically takes the formula of what works with Wizard of Oz. If you think about how it breaks down, it's a lot of the same kind of story.
Yeah, I feel like upon his journey, you kind of come across these characters one by one, similar to the Wizard of Oz, and their strengths and how they kind of come together to help a young child. Or adolescent child try to get to the whatever goal they're trying to do. Obviously, in this case, they're trying to save the family farm.
Yeah, in this, it's not necessarily a history lesson, but there is. I mean, I guess it's a history, not factual history, but how we used to spread stories. There's a lot of stuff that kind of breaks down history into its nuts and bolts. Like how Billy the Kid is, how. When you grew up, that story was much more like fantastical. But over the years, they've done more research and it's got more technical. And like, well, this is what he actually was. This is where he was from, whatever. So it kind of kills some of the imagination part. And this movie fully embraces it.
Yeah, I think what fascinated me was the way that obviously like the locomotive was kind of that new thing in the future, or obviously where we're at in today's society, something like trains is kind of a pastime, but back then it was very prevalent, and obviously it changed the way people traveled, it changed the way goods were dispersed and things like that. But it was always it's good to see that history of the importance of, hey, this locomotive thing, this is a big thing. So we've got a lot of very rich people investing in it, and we're going to make a lot of money, and we're going to do a lot of this stuff. So it's kind of a lot of the beginning of that corporate type of setting.
Yeah,
it's funny when I was watching the movie, I kind of they threw out like, oh, it's $50 an acre of your farm, and I was kind of like, I wonder what that would be like. So like I went through and like kind of looked at my phone and did a little bit of math, and I was thinking a farm back then, average anywhere from like 30 to 40 acres, $50 an acre. At that money at that time was anywhere near like $70,000 or something like that.
Oh, wow.
Today's money. So to think, and I remember the funny thing is like, oh, well, that's a lot of money. One of the townspeople were saying, so I kind of was like, yeah, $50 is a lot of money. Let me see what it was, that at that time. So I did a little bit of digging just to kind of like put things in perspective, because I know it's hard nowadays to hear $50 an acre, 50 acres. That's nothing for a farm. But yeah, it was like about like anywhere from $70,000 and up for them to be bought out of their farms.
Yeah, that's bananas. I would say this isn't for young kids. If you like have children and you have the Disney Channel, you want to check this out, I would probably say maybe over 8, because there is a couple serious sequences.
Yeah, I laughed at there's a very almost scary scene when those two like bandits kind of approach the main character, and like, oh, we're gonna kill him, like and they're fighting over who gets to kill him. So it can be a lot darker in that sense, and obviously in that scene, in that moment, because they're getting ready, like and in a kids movie, or at least a movie like this put on by Disney, like there's the death of a character almost like by murder is something that's not really heard of.
Yeah, it's something that, well, I mean, we grew up, and especially in the 80s, it was really dark. They were testing the waters to see what they could get away with a PG, until PG-13 got introduced, and then, pull back a little bit. But the second film that I want to discuss is one that's even darker, is Tom and Huck, where, I mean, they're straight up. People do get murdered, that they're being hunted. I mean, it sticks true to the story, but I was just shocked that they didn't water it down at all.
Yeah, and with a movie like that too, like, and a star in there like Jonathan Taylor Thomas again. Like, I know we've had him in a couple of things that we've discussed, but a lot of kids recognize that name and that face, and you have his face on the cover of a movie poster, and kids are going to want to go and see it, and then you're dealing with, like you said, murder, and then being hunted, and kind of like a manhunt for them at times, like where it's like, whoa, like. Me kind of revisiting, like, oh man, like I forgot everything that was in this movie almost.
Yeah, it's not really Tom and Huck. That's kind of a missell, because if you watch the movie, and of course it's based on the original book, is that it was the adventures of Tom Sawyer, and Huckleberry Finn's just a part of that story.
Yeah.
Wildly different than the Huckleberry Finn with Elijah Wood from a couple years earlier.
Yeah, I definitely, rewatching it was just like, kind of like in awe a little bit, like, yeah, oh yeah, I forgot this was in there, oh yeah.
It was a first time watch for me. I remember this movie was cursed because it came out against, I think, 9 other movies on the same day or within a couple days, and it just got buried. It's a pretty good movie. I know that Man of the House was his one big hit, Jonathan Taylor Thomas. I think this is better, and I think it deserved more than what it got.
Yeah, and unfortunately, like, the only thing we have to go off of is performance in the box office for some of these movies, and executives are like, if it tanked, it's because it didn't make its money back, or whatever the case may be. So it's really tough, because the story could be amazing, everything could be going right for it, but because it doesn't make money, it's just deemed as like, oh, it didn't do well, or it's not a good movie.
Yeah, and they never blame themselves. They blame, like, oh, well, Jonathan Taylor Thomas isn't a big draw. Are you kidding me? He's on the #1 show in the world, and he just came off of Lion King and Man of the House. It's your guys that did it.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's funny because we talk about home improvement. I watched a documentary about the Dana Carvey show that's out on Hulu or something like that. Yeah, and it's funny because obviously that show was slotted with Home Improvement, and as genius of a show as that is, and as funny as a show that is, like, just not getting to the right audience, or not being something that was in mass, like something that was well received. It was a flop of a show, or a horrible show. But there's a reason why cult followings exist, like, because it is something that's good and people enjoy.
Yeah, I just remember, like, Jonathan Taylor Thomas, and I was right past my age group, and I think it was starting to age out of where my sister was. She was 15 when this came out, almost 16. But I remember like that was a big deal on all the magazines that she was getting. It was JTT. What's JTT up to? I mean, the kid was a phenomenon, and the next generation has no clue because he only did what, like 5 movies and then just left Hollywood.
Yeah, I remember him as a kid. I'm a little younger than you, but I remember him as a kid, kind of on the face of every magazine and like every movie he did. It's like the press was kind of all over him. Lion King obviously was a big one. Even though he's not in it very long, as far as his voicing talents, but he had so much notoriety from that and from Home Improvement and Huck and Finn and everything that he was kind of in was automatically like, had eyes on it.
Yeah, and I think the pressure, I mean, I don't know what he does now, but the pressure probably was very, very heavy. I mean, there's 2 other kids on that show, and they weren't getting anywhere near the same attention.
Oh, yeah, and that's the thing in the child actor, unfortunately, they're successful, they do these things, and then they kind of are tired of the business and kind of go on and do different things, and we lose those talents, or they lose the heart for what they did, because I mean, obviously everybody has their own story, but it's kind of a shame that somebody that's as talented as him, he's just not in it anymore.
Yeah, and it's also the same for Brad Renfro. I mean, they're both so good in this, and of course, Brad Renfro gave into the whole drug addiction thing, and eventually it just destroyed him. But this is a nice little time capsule before all that basically happened.
Yeah, and these types of things, with things that I remember as a kid, it's always nice to go back and revisit some of the things. Like, I know, obviously, me being the generation of like Power Rangers is really hard to hear about, like Jason David Frank's like passing away, and just like, man, that dude was like my favorite Power Ranger. Of course, he's everybody's favorite Power Ranger, so. The minute you hear something like that, you kind of go back and enjoy some of the things that you've seen him in. Like, I went back and watched the Power Rangers movie, the first one that came out, because I remember seeing that in theaters, and I'm just like, being an adult, it's definitely cheesy, but this is a part of my childhood that I enjoy and I love, and I remember some of the same feelings coming back when I was a kid watching it, and it's nice to kind of go back in that time capsule and experience it all over again.
Yeah, and kids movies were different back then. It's just, I feel like there's not a lot of kid movies that aren't animated in theaters anymore. Do you remember it was like a regular thing, like once a month you'd get some kids movie in theater? Not all of them were hits, but now it seems like if there's a risk involved, even the animated ones, they seem to go straight to streaming.
Yeah, and I think obviously the pandemic kind of contributed to a lot of that as well. I will say the really bigger movies, and because I have kids, I gotta pay attention. But like the last few movies we went to go see with kids as a family was the Addams Family animated, and we just went to go watch the Puss in Boots, the latest movie that they just came out with.
Yeah.
And so like obviously like those are 2 kind of well established franchises. So it's like, if you're not going off of something that's already kind of established and known, like these things don't happen in theaters. These things get kind of pushed to Disney Plus and Hulu and all these other things. I think the next one we're going to end up watching is going to be the new Trolls one that's coming out. It's supposed to be in theaters.
Okay, I was wondering if it was going to be in theaters or not.
I think it's supposed to be in theaters, but I know obviously the previous one happened like right when the pandemic happened, so they just released it to streaming. But you still have to pay for it, but
yeah, but it made mad money. I mean, because that was when they were charging like, if you wanted to rent it, it was $30 or something like that, and they made $50 million in one weekend. So that's the same as what you probably make in theaters. Which brings me to our third film: is do you think the Goofy movie would be streaming now, or do you think they would take that risk in theaters?
I think. And it's hard to say, because now with Disney, I mean, they can almost put anything out in theater form, and they have such a following that people are going to go and see it. But to try to like think of it back in the day, and this, obviously Disney wasn't the huge giant that it is now. I don't think they put it out out in theaters, or they make that risk with it being solely animated. You know, you got to think Goofy is not obviously a main character in any of the things that they've done before this movie. I mean, obviously they introduced the character of Max, his son. Well, I mean, he's kind of been around, but like as far as character development, who he is,
Right,
like
right.
that, like this is a movie that's you know almost like a second or third type of spin-off movie, because it was Goofy. I mean, honestly, thinking about the times and where Disney was at, you might watch a movie, or they could have easily did a movie about Donald Duck instead of Goofy, because he was kind of a lot more
Yeah, I was trying to
I
think
guess a
of
lot.
the tier. Like, of course, Mickey's the top tier, but I would say Donald and Goofy are probably second tier. Donald may be a little bit higher just because, we were just coming off of DuckTales being red hot, and then maybe like
Exactly.
Rescue Rangers, somewhere like that. So, was the Goof Troop already on TV, or was this after the movie?
I don't remember, and I could be wrong, but I thought the movie kind of sparked everything.
Okay, because I'm curious, because if it had already built up a huge... Oh, no, Goof Troop came out... it was 92 and 93, 2 seasons, so maybe that was a phenomenon, and they went off that. But if that was true, there'd be a Darkwing Duck movie, damn it.
For sure.
I want to see Tailspin on the big screen. I think this is my favorite character of all the original characters. Goofy just has something about him that everybody can connect with. I guess the same thing with Donald. We've all been angry and got out of control with our patience or whatever, and then there's always those moments where you try to be cool or in control and you just goof it up. And
Yeah.
but I think what makes the movie so good isn't just the brilliant hand drawn animation. It's that there's so much heart in it. I mean, it's ultimately, if you strip away all the antics or whatever, it's about a father and son, and the father wants the kid's attention. He wants him still be that little boy that loves him.
Yeah, and this, I mean, as a kid and watching this movie, this is one of my all-time favorite movies. Like, I put it way up there, especially now that I'm a dad. Not to get too into it, but obviously when I was younger, like I didn't have the luxury of having my dad around as much as I did. So watching this movie kind of made me appreciate, because we've been on trips. We did a lot of. He used to live in Vegas, so he used to come over here to Santa Maria and pick me up and drive back. And these kind of like little instances, or in the movie, kind of reminded me of like, oh hey, we don't get to do some of this stuff very often, but like I enjoyed the little memories on the road, or one of my really favorite memories of him. Every time we're on the road, we eat sunflower seeds.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we eat sunflower seeds, and that's something that we just did every time we had these long trips, and it's something I do today, like myself, me and my son do. So kind of something to pass along. But watching the Goofy movie for me as a kid, like, oh cool, like they kind of have, obviously it's just one really huge trip, but they kind of have a little bit of a experience doing these things. And of course, me watching it as a younger kid, like, oh man, like Goofy's so weird, like why wouldn't he just do what Max wants to do, and yada yada yada. And now, obviously, watching it again as an adult, as a father, as someone who would love to connect with his son, it's like, man, why can't this kid just do what he wants? It's a very funny movie in which your perspective and how you're watching it can definitely change, and I think that's what helps it stand the test of time.
Yeah, thinking about how we were at that age. I mean, I don't know how you were, but I was severely rebellious. And if you tried to tell me what to do or keep me from doing something, I would, move the earth in order to get what I want and get grounded a lot. And
Yeah.
then like,
Yeah.
with your kid getting older, they're going to start getting, I mean, once they get to the teenage years is when they're rebellious, like, they know everything. They're adults, but at the same time, you've got to give them a little bit of credence because you were there as well. And sometimes you were right as a kid.
Yeah, definitely. And I know, like, my son right now, he's 12 years old, so he's getting to that point too, where it's like, okay, well, we gotta do some creative things that kind of coexist. Luckily, with what we have, and we bond a lot through baseball and doing these sports, and we have our kind of thing. Luckily, and I've got a really strong relationship with him in that sense, and we play a couple little mini games on our phones together, so that those are things that we have, and in the movie, that's the hard thing is Goofy's trying to find something that he can relate to with his son, and he feels like, he kind of blinked his eye, and he's grown up already, and he doesn't have a way of connecting with him. They don't have their thing together, and as a parent, it's a very scary thought to think like, man, I don't have a relationship with my son, and getting to the point where you're trying everything you can and nothing's working, and you kind of see that in the movie.
Yeah, I had the exact opposite. I tried to connect to my father, for decades, and I never could. I could never connect to him. So this movie it's a little whimsical and sad, a little heartbreaking for me. Not to bring the episode down, I'm sorry, everybody. Have you seen the sequel, Extremely Goofy Movie?
I have. I have
good?
seen the movie. I think for a while that was the only one that was on Disney Plus streaming.
That's weird.
Yeah. So I watched it, and obviously a little bit of the same type of themes, but it does change a little, like midway, where Goofy starts to have his own life away from his son, and he starts kind of growing as not just a father, but growing as a human being too, kind of bettering himself in a sense.
Okay, well that's a good idea. I like sequels that actually keep moving the story forward instead of repeating all the same fun bits you like in the first one. It's like, well, that it's not really like a series; it's just another entry, like James Bond.
Yeah. Have you seen it or heard about it?
I saw it a really long time ago, and I went to, it was 2019. I went to a convention in Portland where some of the cast reunited, and they were talking about it, and I remembered, I was like, oh, I should go watch the sequel, because everybody here seems to like it, but I never got around to it. I still haven't. But I'll say this, Pauly Shore never wants to hear you ever say Leaning Tower of Pisa ever again, because 12 people said it, and eventually he walked out.
Oh, man.
He just left because he couldn't take it anymore.
You'd think with all of his one-liners, like, he would be used to something like that.
Yeah, but for some reason, not one. Just everybody kept getting in line and just saying it to him. He's like, did you have a question? No, I just wanted to do that. All right, I'll go talk to my agent.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, the second one, it's, premise-wise, pretty much Goofy almost, he follows Max to college. So...
Oof, that's kind of suffocating. The other animated movie from Disney from 1995, I think it's the only other animated one, is the big epic Pocahontas. And I know at the time that they were saying this was a flop because it didn't hit the Lion King numbers, but that was a phenomenon. That was something so unique and so different. I just don't think it's ever going to be captured that way again. Has any Disney movie ever made that much attention in money?
Animated? Until you get to some of the Pixar stuff, I don't think it does.
I don't know. I feel like it's the biggest. So everything after that is, of course, going to be a letdown if you expect everything to make $400 million or something like that. I don't think it's as good. I think it is kind of lower tier of this era, but it's still pretty good.
Yeah, it definitely, and it's a very touchy subject of course, the whole indigenous battle and colonization of things, and with Pocahontas, obviously it's almost like a tall tale in itself as far as the movie and how everything went, because you really can't. You really can't have some of the things in the kids' movie, but especially an animated one. But
yeah, it's really hard to get this idea across, and that might have been another reason why I didn't do as well at the box office, because it's a little off-putting.
Yeah, and back then, a movie like this, I don't think has the ability to come out today with so much focus on like, oh well, this is an indigenous story, what can be made that's going to be offensive to this group of people or this group of people, or we're glamming it up so it's going to make people upset about it.
Well, I'm told that I need to watch I think it's called The New World with Christian Bale, which is a much truer version of this story.
It'd be definitely something I have to check out.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. This is the first time watch for me too. This is the one that I avoided during this era because it just didn't seem interesting to me. But also Mel Gibson would never be cast if it was made today. But I think like the way it's designed and the songs are really good, and it's just in general though they are doing a lot of whitewashing of this story.
Yeah, and I remember as a kid, obviously this wasn't something that appealed to me either, but I had sisters, so my sisters being younger, that's something that they were into. So we watched it, we experienced it as a family as well, and of course the a lot of the merchandise and a lot of the toys and things like that my sisters owned. So it's something that was around our family a lot, and the music is very good. Like, you know, it's really hard to sit through a Disney movie and not have some of the tunes in your head. So that does a lot for a lot of the movies that they do. And the animation, I think, was done really well. And it's kind of different in the sense where you don't have a female character who's a princess. You don't have a female character who is a glammed up version of I'm a damsel in distress and I need to be saved. So that's what was a lot different from this movie as well. And I think it really had a whole generation of young girls and women that are like, hey, you know, I can be this woman as well.
Is this the only movie they've ever made based on fact? I mean, it's an exaggerated fact, but I'm trying to think of all their animated movies. They always seem to be based off like fantasy books and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Mulan was based on something similar.
I don't know.
You know, as far as historically, you know, a daughter taking the place of her father in war.
Yeah, that's a much better movie.
Yeah, it's a little more, you know, kind of tag one for all of womankind, because that, you know, takes a lot of guts. A lot of men can't do what she did, but yeah, I think maybe that one might be. I'm sure at some point in history something like that happened. I think they obviously just made it to a very, you know, one-centric character.
Right, and so another tall tale, basically, like just taking a legendary story and just exaggerating or building upon it.
Yeah. There's a really big tall tale type of theme here today.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of like their special sauce, is that they would take like classic stories and reinterpret it, or you know, classic books and stuff like that. And our final entry is a twist on the Mark Twain novel, A Connecticut in King Arthur's Court, which we know as A King in King Arthur's Court.
Yeah, and I believe it was the same actor from Rookie of the Year, right?
Yep, Thomas Ian Nicholas. So this isn't technically a Disney movie. They didn't make this. It was a pickup. Trimark Pictures made it, but then realized how expensive, you know, how much money they had spent for a tiny studio, and they sold it to Disney. But they did keep the sequel, which I have never seen, called I think it's called A Kid in Aladdin's Court.
Yeah, I've never seen that either.
Yeah, it was a direct-to-video sequel. We almost saw this in theaters, but then for some reason, so me and my best friend in college, we watched whatever just interested us, but then we would casually mention that to people, and like, you're gonna go see a kids movie? You're 18. What are you doing? Let's go see Mortal Kombat. I'm like, okay.
Good old Mortal Kombat.
Mortal Kombat is just about as good as this one. They haven't aged particularly well, but I'll say this. I guess I got into it a little bit more than Mortal Kombat when I revisited it, because Mortal Kombat is just, I don't know, well, besides bad CGI, I guess I'm just beyond Enter the Dragon ripoffs. I like the new Mortal Kombat, though, that came out a few years ago. That was great.
Oh, yeah, the one that was HBO Max.
Yeah, so Kid in King Arthur's Court, it does change things quite a bit. It's kind of a reinterpretation of the King Arthur legend, because King Arthur is an old doddering fool, and he doesn't really have his Knights of the Round Table, and he never really had any noble battles, and Merlin is trapped, right? He's like trapped in the fountain, the magical fountain or something like that.
Yeah.
What's astounding is seeing baby Daniel Craig, who still looks like an old man at however old he was. Good Lord, he looked 50 back then.
He's got like that Steve Martin type of. He just always looks old.
Yeah, and Kate Winslet is in this too, very early on.
Yeah,
But I do like the chemistry that Thomas Ian Nicholas has with the main girl. And, the fun part of it is like, hey, I'm from this time, and I could show you modern gadgets. But I'll say this. CD players, kids, you've never had a portable CD player? They never did that. Lasers don't shoot out of them.
Yeah, well, it's funny. Obviously, CDs are almost extinct now. You can't get a new one anywhere. But it's definitely. I remember as a kid, like taking my Walkman to school and trying to fit it in my pocket. And being able to do so in some jeans, but walking around and having it skip.
Oh God! So you had to have that thing on. Remember when the CD player started introducing like the stabilizer? Yeah, I was like, it's a miracle.
Yeah, obviously the one that I had as a 11, 10-year-old didn't have that kind of technology just yet. So.
Yeah, I held on to my cassette player for a very long time because there was no way I was going to deal with all that. But yeah, it's just a real fun, simple story. The weird thing is Disney did this 3 times in 15 years because in '79 they did Unidentified Flying Oddball, which is about an astronaut going back to King Arthur time. And then when ABC was doing the Disney Movies of the Week, they did one with the little girl from The Cosby Show called No, they did it 4 times. I forgot. After this, like 5 years later, is when Whoopi Goldberg did Connecticut in King Arthur's Court. Wow, that's a very popular thing for them to go back to.
Yeah, and I don't remember it, but maybe it was some kind of medieval type of kick. When did like Medieval Times come out? Was this around that time?
The restaurant?
Yeah, like the entertainment restaurant.
I don't know. I know in the 70s there was a big revival of sword and sorcery because everybody discovered Conan. And that's when like Dungeons and Dragons would start, and then you got all those sword and sorcery movies of the 80s. And I feel like there was a 90s period where it was kind of dead, but everybody knows King Arthur. So that's unique to the whole thing. Like you can King Arthur comes back in one way or another, a movie or a TV show, like every 5 years. It's crazy how this thing won't die off.
I was going to say, I'm sure we'll see something in the next few years about it.
Wasn't there... I feel like there was a... damn it. He played Martin. I can't think of Bad Boys. Martin Lawrence? He was in a movie called Black Knight, which I think is the same plot as well. Yeah, I believe so. It's kind of fun, though, watching people with from modern times go into a different era. I mean, that's why Back to the Future is so much fun, is because, that juxtaposition.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and like how many sequels Back to the Future had.
Yeah. I would say this is probably the weakest of the group of movies that we've chosen, but it's still not bad. It's a fun time waster. It's not overlong by any means.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the the kid in King Arthur's Court. I'm sorry if I missed it. Did you say it was it a straight release or?
Oh no, it was in theaters. It was in theaters. It was released on Labor Day weekend because I remember that's right when we first got to college. It did okay, but it wasn't enough for the sequel to go to theaters. Yeah, and Labor Day weekend, you're battling people going out and camping. Yeah. Well, you remember the clamshell VHS tapes that were a phenomenon?
Yes.
This seems like one that was constantly selling in rotation because those you could get a lot cheaper than other movies. Because those are always $24 or something like that. You just go to a drugstore and pick up a copy.
Yeah, definitely.
I got nothing else to say about any of these films. Anything else you want to say?
No. I mean, the 90s, a lot of differences what you could do compared to what you can do now. But obviously, because it's the 90s, it's an awesome time. It's our all kind of my generational thing, and loved a lot of these movies. Got to experience a lot of them as a kid, and being able to revisit them has been awesome. Yeah,
a few of these were, like I said, absolute first-timers for me. Some were revisits. I watch Goofy Movie probably every few years. It's an absolute Stone Cold classic for me.
Yes, definitely.
So we'll be back in the summer with the 1996 films, and thank you everybody for listening, and have a good one.
Have a good one.